Right, we are recording. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Stave 3, the Ghost of Christmas Present. This is like really dense with a lot of stuff, so I'll try to move fast. What do you remember about the Ghost of Christmas Present? What happens this time?
I guess he sees what is like. Wasn't the sister this? That he saw that?
That was in the first section, or the second section rather.
Okay.
And now we're going to see what Christmas is like right now. People Scrooge knows, people Scrooge doesn't know how they celebrate Christmas. And there's a lot of symbolism and imagery in here tied to Christmas and tied to Jesus that we will talk about. But first, we're going to have a digression because in the beginning of this section, Dickens mentions spontaneous human combustion, which is extremely weird. And Paul noticed this, and he thought it would be interesting to learn a little bit about it quickly before we start. If you want to come up, that's fine.
Sure. Well, as many of you know, I taught chemistry at Bearville High School for a number of years, and spontaneous human combustion is really something that was, as Jeanette said, weird and unexplained. And there are some chemical reactions that occur that way. You can mix potassium permanganate with glycerin, and it catches on fire. White phosphorus, if exposed to air, catches on fire. They're at room temperature to begin with. So some of these things were thought of as being, they found situations where there was like a hand here and a foot there, next to somewhere like a fireplace, and it wasn't completely combusted. And so I had students do projects, and one of the ones that came up often was this one. So they had various explanations, like hydrogen is highly flammable being produced in the body, phosphorus being produced in the body. The fire source was sort of ignored because they said at times that this happened without any fire source necessary. But if you look back at the evidence, there was typically a candle or a fireplace or something like that. So other explanations, the person that was combusted spontaneously was typically overweight and alcoholic, or drank a lot of alcohol. We thought that might be the reason. But actually, what they've come to in sort of a conclusion now on this point is that it could be due to something called the wick effect. So if you're near a source of ignition, some part of the body would catch on fire, and then the fat in that body could continue to combust slowly and not develop a very high temperature, so that you can get to the point where you have more of bone on bone, like your hands and so on, that it wouldn't combust that part, but where the fat of your body exists. Whether that's actually true or not, they're not very sure, because it's very, very rarely happens. And many think it's probably a hoax. It could be a hoax. So one way or the other. But Jeanette's got the history of that.
It's really hard to get people to volunteer for studies.
Exactly. Actually, I forgot to mention this, but actually they used pigs, because they said pigs have a similar fat composition as humans.
So like in the 19th century, this was kind of a popular kind of maybe conspiracy theory that you could just burst into flames at any time. And Dickens loved it. He believed in this. And on page 76, I'll just quickly say, Scrooge was sometimes apprehensive that he might be at that very moment an interesting case of spontaneous combustion. And that's because he's seeing this glow outside of his curtains, and he's not really sure what's going on, because the Ghost of Christmas Present, like the other one, just sort of showed up and was like, hey, here I am. Nothing like that's happening, but there's this glow. And he's like, am I going to catch fire right now? And someone wrote Dickens after he wrote this book and was like, come on, that's not a thing. And Dickens wrote back, I know 30 people who've caught fire. 30 different cases. So he was really convinced. I don't know, I'm a little skeptical. But Scrooge did not catch fire.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, that would have been an end to the story. It would be pretty short. Instead, he notices that the glow is actually coming from the other room. You know, he's in his bedroom, and it's coming from the sitting room. And so he comes out into his sitting room, and it is completely different from how it ever has been before. It was his own room. There was no doubt about that. But it had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked a perfect grove, and he describes that and how beautiful it is. And all around on the floor, to form a kind of throne, were turkeys, geese, game, poultry, brawn, great joints of meat, sucking pigs, long wreaths of sausages, mince pies, plum puddings, barrels of oysters, red-hot chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, juicy oranges, luscious pears, immense 12 cakes, and seething bowls of punch, and so on. And on top of this, there is a jolly giant holding a torch in the shape not unlike Plenty's horn. What does that seem like to you? This is the Ghost of Christmas Present.
Big feast.
Big feast, all sorts of stuff. The cornucopia in his hand with a glowing light, sitting on this throne surrounded by greens. It's Christmas happening right now, isn't it? The things you have at Christmas.
Stuff that he was stingy on, now he's got.
Yeah, there's a plenty about Christmas that he has been denying himself, Scrooge. And now he's seeing it. I think one of the things that Dickens is alluding to are paintings like this one. You've probably seen them before. These kind of Dutch old master paintings where they pile food all over the place and make huge spreads that are about like how wealthy you are and all of your bounty that you have, but it's all ephemeral. The symbolism is often very Christian, and it often is relating to the ways that the things you have now exist now. You know, like, the little crabs and shrimps and lobster, that's not gonna last more than a few hours just sitting on that table, right? Right. The idea is that the plenty of now is only for now. We're in the present. We're in the moment when this is still fresh, when you can still act, when things are still new. Come in and know me better, man. He's very cheerful. Though the spirit's eyes were clear and kind, Scrooge did not like to meet them. Does that remind you of anything from last time? I have something specific in mind here. The light from the Ghost of Christmas Past and how Scrooge did not want to look at it. The same kind of thing. It's hard to face because he's been so removed from it for so long. The spirit is clothed in a green robe. The garment hung so loosely on the figure that its capacious breast was bare, as if disdaining to be warded or concealed by any artifice. On its head it wore no other covering than a holly wreath. Girded round its middle was an antique scabbard, but no sword was in it, and the ancient sheath was eaten up with rust. What kind of things might this symbolism be getting at? And we'll go into more detail, but things that jump out at you.
Well, without the sword, it's a time of peace.
The Prince of Peace has come. It's Christmas. It's about Christ with us, right? And all of what the Ghost of Christmas Present does is about Christ being with us, about the incarnation, and we'll talk about that. Let's get into some references. Here's the Green Man. Has anyone seen a Green Man before? Anyone know what this is? Old medieval England churches have these, this is in Devon, have these sculptures of a man with greens flowing around him. They're kind of like the wreath going around the head of the spirit. Symbolism of our connection to nature, of rebirth, tied to Christmas often because they're often holly or other evergreens coming out of his face. And so a way of understanding how we are being reborn every year. You can see how that might tie to Jesus. This is kind of a grisly drawing. It looks like something a kid might be drawing in the back of their classroom. Anyone heard of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight? This is a medieval poem, and a green giant shows up in the court of King Arthur on Christmas Day and offers to play a game with Sir Gawain, who is kind of arrogant and punchy and is like, yeah, I'll do that. And he's like, okay, you cut off my head, and then I can cut off yours in a year. And he's like, you cut off your head? No, go ahead. And he's feeling like he has to do it because everyone's watching. So he does it. And the guy walks over and picks up his head and says, "I'll see you later." And there's this whole long process by which Gawain is trying to figure out how to get out of his bargain that he just made because he was a little drunk and trying to show off. And he learns a bunch of lessons, and then the Green Knight shows up to cut off his head and says, "You know what? Never mind. You're fine. Keep your head. You've learned your lesson." And you think he's intended to be a symbol of Jesus. You know, we've killed Jesus. We have done that kind of violence. And he forgoes any kind of return and forgives us. And it's a very playful story. It's actually kind of funny. And in the drawing, you can see his head is entirely off. But the kind of green giant who's about regeneration and life and kind of a playful, happy presence, this is the kind of reference that Dickens is making. Father Christmas. Do you know anything about Father Christmas and how he might be different from Santa Claus?
That's a more of a European.
Yeah.
Santa Claus is more American.
Yes, Santa Claus is more American. You think of those Coca-Cola ads.
Yeah.
And a little more tied into like the sort of commercial aspects of things. Father Christmas is a bit older. He usually wears green, and you can see the ties to the Ghost of Christmas Present, right? The green robe. You see this one kind of sinister on the right there. He has all the holly and mistletoe all around him. I also think we're thinking about Jesus here. The empty, the swordless scabbard, you know, the Prince of Peace being with us. The open chest. You remember it said that his robe couldn't contain his chest because his heart was just glowing and open. I'm thinking that is referring to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Anyone familiar with that? The Sacred Heart of Jesus? Yeah. The painting in the middle is a little later than Christmas Carol, but it has the kind of Jesus I think that the story is imagining. This kind of strong, he sort of has some greenness to him. He's surrounded by nature. He's very warm. He has the crown. It has that vibe to me. Also, have you ever heard the Christmas Carol, The Holly and the Ivy?
Yeah.
Yes. So you can get how all of that symbolism of the greens, all of it has references to Christianity and what Jesus has done in the Incarnation. So I think what we're getting here is a bit of an amalgam of everything that Christmas is. The Ghost of Christmas Present is Father Christmas. He's all the celebration of food and fun and happiness, but he's also the presence of Christ with us in his warmth, in his giving nature, in his embrace of everybody. And that's what Christmas is to Dickens. It's Christ with us, giving to everybody, and we should share in return. They go out into the town. They see everybody getting ready for Christmas. Some of the shops are still open. People are doing their shopping in the morning before they close. Everyone's getting ready. You know, they only had the one day off, so sometimes you had to keep the stores open a little longer. But soon the steeples called good people all to church and chapel, and away they came, flocking through the streets in their best clothes, with their gayest faces. And at the same time there emerged from scores of by-streets, lanes, and nameless turnings, innumerable people carrying their dinners to bakers' shops. So, do you know about this? That this is something that's a little unfamiliar to us, that they're taking their dinners to the bakers' shops. Does anyone know anything about that? This is because most people didn't have an oven in their house and really didn't have time or the money to cook meat during the week because they worked so much. People worked much longer hours than they do now. So on days off, if you had a cut of meat, you would take it to the bakery. The bakery would roast it for you, and then you would pick it up. And they would do this on Sundays, and they would do this on holidays. So that's what's happening here. Everyone's running off to get their cuts of meat. You'd have to be rich to have your own kitchen that is fully stocked. So as they go by, the Spirit is taking off the covers of their roasting pans and sprinkling something in there, something from his torch. Once or twice, when there were angry words between some dinner carriers who had jostled each other, he shed a few drops of water on them from his torch, and their good humor was restored directly, for they said it was a shame to quarrel on Christmas Day, and so it was. What's coming out of his torch?
Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit, the water and the fire, right? I'm sorry?
Peace?
Peace, yes. And it's giving you peace. It's giving you the sense that we're all part of Christ's family. We're all experiencing the love of Jesus with us now, which is what Christmas is all about. Is there a peculiar flavor in what you sprinkle from your torch? There is, my own. Would it apply to any kind of dinner on this day? To any kindly given, to a poor one most. Why to a poor one most? Because it needs it most. In the manuscript, that's not what it says. In the manuscript, the original writing, you can see he crossed it out here. Because my eldest brother took them especially under his protection. What does he mean by that? Jesus. The first moment that we had Christ with us, the first Christmas, it was Jesus who was the ghost of Christmas present, who was the Spirit with us. And after that, he's had brothers throughout time, these sort of echoes of Christ with us, all the way to 1843 when the book was written. He scratched this out, Dickens. He did this because it was considered inappropriate to mention Jesus too much in works of fiction. It was considered disrespectful. Like, if you're making things up about Jesus, you shouldn't do that. So he scratched it out, not wanting to offend people. This book still got angry letters from people who thought it was disrespectful to Jesus. Dickens disagreed, but, and I might disagree, but it was a different time. That's why he removed this. But I think it really shows who he imagines the ghost of Christmas present to be. A little more going on here. Those bakeries that all the people are taking their cuts of meat to. Spirit, I wonder that you, of all the beings and the many words about us, should desire to cramp these people's opportunities of innocent enjoyment. Me? What are you talking about? You seek to close these places on the seventh day, and it comes to the same thing. This is what's going on. Some folks in Parliament were trying to pass laws to ban keeping the bakeries open on Sundays and holidays because it was the holy day of rest, and people should not be working. But of course, this meant if you were rich and had your own kitchen, all your kitchen staff were cooking for you. But if you were poor, you wouldn't even get one meal a week that was hot. And Dickens was angry about that. He was very angry about it. They also wanted to close things like adult education on Sunday evenings, where people could go and start learning trades or skills or about history or anything that they were interested in. It was the only time an ordinary person would have time to do that. But it's disrespectful. Of course, the rich could do it anytime. So basically, it's creating an inequality between people about what they have a right to do with their lives, depending on how much money they have. Dickens didn't like that. He supported something called the National Sunday League, which was trying to get them to relax blue laws that control holidays even more so. And he worked on funding things like adult education on Sundays and lecture series and concerts, things that would enrich people's lives. Because, as he said, the Sabbath was made for man, not man to serve the Sabbath. He has some strong opinions, and he mentions them here. In The Voice of the Spirit, in response to being accused of being responsible for this. Yeah, you represent Jesus? Well, the people who represent Jesus say we should close the shops on Sunday. There are some upon this earth of yours who lay claim to know us, and who do their deeds of passion, pride, ill will, hatred, envy, bigotry, and selfishness in our name, who are as strange to us and all our kith and kin as if they had never lived. Tell us what you really think, Chuck, right? And this is, of course, referencing Matthew 7:21-23. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name? Then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Go away from me, you who behave lawlessly. He feels really strongly about this. He is saying that we shouldn't be following the letter of the law over the spirit of the law. The Spirit of Christ is giving. It wants people to have opportunities and comforts and to share with others. It doesn't want them sitting at home eating cold meals and unable to do anything with their only free time. He wants us to be able to be human together. Any questions? So, after we're running around in the streets, we end up at the Cratchit's house. They say it has 4 rooms. I, a number of years ago, went to see Dickens's house that he lived in right about now, which is close to Camden Town, which is where the Cratchits live. His parents also had a house in that town, in that area, when he was really young. And I mean, it's a kind of, I mean, it's very posh now, but it was very run down at the time. And you get a sense, I mean, it wasn't a tiny house. There was enough room to live. But, you know, it is narrow. This is a bad neighborhood. Later on, they talk about being worried someone might steal their cooling food off of the windowsill. That actually happened. People would like steal your food if you're trying to cool it because everyone needed more food. So kind of a rough neighborhood, a little awkward for kids, you know, that kind of thing. Okay, but not great. And that's sort of the story of the Cratchit's life. His salary is almost exactly median for the kind of work he's doing. Scrooge isn't cheating him, but he's not giving him any extra. And so you see that they live this life where they have enough to skate along. There's food, everyone is clothed. It's not great. They've had to mend everything a few times. They don't have extra. All of their Christmas dinner is eaten in one sitting, etc. There's nothing extra. So there's also nothing extra to help with a child with serious health problems. I think this might be relatable to working class folks now. You know, who have enough to live, but if any disaster happened, it would be catastrophic for them. Or if someone has a health crisis, it could be catastrophic for them. This is where the Cratchits live. We meet Tiny Tim. What do you guys know about Tiny Tim?
Crutch.
Yeah, the little crutch. He's all cute and sweet. I think there's a couple things Dickens is doing here. So let's look at this passage. They've just come home from church, Bob and Tiny Tim on his shoulder. Christmas morning, they went to the services while the women were at home getting the food ready. Somehow he gets thoughtful sitting by himself so much, you know, because he's ill and can't play, and thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me coming home that he hoped the people saw him in the church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. What does this tell us about Tiny Tim?
He's a believer.
I'm sorry?
He's a believer.
He believes in Jesus.
Yeah.
He's fully embracing Christ with us. He's seeing himself as a part of that. You remember when Scrooge talked about the surplus population, people who aren't worth anything, who are extra, who can't produce anything, right? And don't deserve to be here. We talked about that in the first meeting. He does produce something, I'd say. He's talking about it. He says, it's useful for people to see me because they'll remember Jesus. He has a function. He is here to be appreciated and loved. He's open in a way Scrooge is closed. He's young and innocent in a way Scrooge is old and withered and cynical. I'd say he's like the opposite of Scrooge. He can't provide anything. He can't make anything. He can't do anything to justify his existence, but he's valuable anyway. And I think that is what Dickens wants us to understand.
I think when you look at that last part,
Yeah.
William Bever's walking blind and see that he accepts his condition, but also is hopeful in the regard that he might be healed.
Right, and you see that in a sort of tense way in what Bob says right after that, too. Bob's voice was tremulous when he told him this, and trembled more when he said Tiny Tim was growing strong and hearty. He doesn't quite believe it, but he wants it to be the case. Right, he's not complacent about his health. He's not saying, well, this is just the way it is forever. He has hopes, and he is seeing that it is possible to be healed. And, spoiler alert, that's going to happen. You see the anxiety of a parent with a sick child. After dinner, of course, he's given all the children gin punch. As we learned last time, giving alcohol to children seems to be the Christmas spirit. So they're all sitting around the fire after
It's a
that.
spirit after all.
Yeah, that is a spirit. He sat very close to his father's side upon his little stool. Bob held his withered little hand in his, as if he loved the child, and wished to keep him by his side, and dreaded that he might be taken from him. His value doesn't come from anything he can do, it's from his presence. And the fragility of that. This is the Ghost of Christmas present. We have so little time together. Now is precious, this moment of now where he can hold his little kid's hand and he doesn't know if it's going to last. So right now matters so much. Spirit, said Scrooge with an interest he had never felt before, tell me if Tiny Tim will live. I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remained unaltered by the future, the child will die. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, he says again, none other of my race will find him here. So he won't last another year. Next Christmas, he'll be gone. What then? If he be like to die, he'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. Yes. He's throwing Scrooge's words back on him. When he was being ignorant, you remember, he said, I don't know that people are unable to go to the debtors' prisons or can't go to the workhouse. They'll take care of it. But now he does know because he's gone out and seen what it's like to have a child who's fragile and being poor. And he understands differently. So the words he said before hurt him just to hear them. He's overcome with penitence and grief. The ghost continues, man, if you be in heart not adamant, forbear that wicked cant until you discover what the surplus is and where it is. Will you decide what men shall live and what men shall die? It may be that, in the sight of heaven, you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child. O God, to hear the insect on the leaf pronouncing on the too much life among his hungry brothers in the dust. What's he saying here? Can you interpret this?
Last will be first, and the first will be last.
Yes, you're rich and important, but you might not be so valuable compared to this little child who's surrounded by love and makes such a difference to the people who care about him. Scrooge has separated himself from everyone. He doesn't matter that much right now. Maybe he's less valuable if they're going to measure it, right? To hear the insect on the leaf pronouncing on the too much life among his hungry brothers in the dust. Imagining like a whole bunch of locusts or grasshoppers or bugs, and one of them just happens to be on the leaf. Oh, I have the great big leaf, I can eat that. I'm better than the other one who's on the ground and doesn't have a leaf. What you have is a matter of chance a lot of the time, or a matter of circumstance. It doesn't make you better than other people. You're all the same. There's a lot of references to people being like grasshoppers in the Bible. I just picked one of them. It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. I don't think it's saying that we're bad or gross or anything like that. I mean, it doesn't seem to be suggesting that that's the point here. It's that we're all the same. There's just great swarms of people who are all the same. They have equal value. And that's what Dickens is saying. So I'll just pop back here for a second. This phrase, the poor man's child, this is very important because it is the reason Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol. So this is how he came to decide to write this book. He was passionate about helping the poor. He was angry about the way they were treated. He felt like this had to change, and people needed to have more opportunities, and opportunities just to be people, and have time to themselves, and healthy, safe places to live, enough food to eat. Children shouldn't have to work long hours, etc., etc. The kind of basic rights we take for granted, but we're not there then. He did a lot for this. He toured London's slums, factories, he went into the coal mines, and he would write exposés and stories so that people would understand what he saw there. He knew people like Scrooge didn't know about this stuff. People who are richer, they kind of just glide through the city. They might see poor people, but they don't know what it's like to be poor. So he went to tell them. In Oliver Twist, which was a very popular book and was written a few years before Christmas Carol, he described this slum here, it's kind of hard to see in the drawing, in London, that was extremely bad, and the conditions were terrible to live in. People were dying there in large quantities from disease. It was unsafe for fires, there were rodents. He wrote about it, he got people's attention. They got government intervention, they cleaned it all up, rebuilt it, and made it safer. And that was because of Dickens. He was like this in his personal life. One of my favorite research interests is Edgar Allan Poe. And he was friends with Dickens, and I could go on about that forever. But Poe was kind of a difficult guy to get along with sometimes, and he got it in his head that Dickens had written an anonymous critical review of his work. He didn't do it, it was someone else. And he got really mad at Dickens and wouldn't talk to him anymore. And then Poe died, and his mother-in-law was his only surviving relative and had nothing. And she was just going to end up going to a poorhouse herself. Dickens came to see her personally and handed her $2,000 in cash. And he did that because he cared. And he did this for people. He valued people's safety and comfort and saw them as important. Anyway, he read a report on the condition of children's employment in England. And it was appalling. The kind of hours children were required to work, the conditions of their work, how unsafe it was, how they didn't have chances for education, how little they were paid, which made it hard for them to get out of the situation and improve it. He had identified with this too, of course, because as last time we talked about, he had worked in a sweatshop as a child, and he had seen what it was like, and it was only out of luck and circumstance that he was able to get his way out. Most children would not. He was very upset about this. He contacted the people who wrote the report to ask if he could help. He wanted to write a pamphlet to get people to know about this better. You know, people aren't going to read a thick government report. He's going to consolidate it, make it more personable, digestible, and call it an appeal to the people of England on behalf of the poor man's child. Do you remember that phrase, poor man's child? That's how he describes Tiny Tim. He changed his mind. He was giving some lectures, and he realized people were responding much more rather than the facts and data and saying, hey, look, this is a real problem. People would accept that. But when he talked about specific kids and how they were affected, he could see the emotions coming up. They could relate to it. They had their own kids. They felt something. And he thought, you know what I should do? I should write a story instead so that people will feel it rather than being lectured, right? He wrote them back. I've changed my mind. you will certainly feel that a sledgehammer has come down with 20 times the force, 20,000 times the force I could exert by following my first idea. And the second idea is a Christmas carol. That's his idea. That's what he wants to do. He's making an argument for why people who are well-to-do in London should take care of poor people's children. We go flying around the countryside after this. We see some lighthouse operators. There's just two of them alone in the lighthouse, and they're celebrating Christmas. We see miners in their family house with a poor old man singing Christmas carols for his family. We go out on the sea, and you see sailors toasting each other and talking about their families back home. Everyone is thinking about Christmas. They're thinking about others. They're being together. And Scrooge is amazed. Even poor people, even people far away, everywhere. It's the Spirit of Christ with us. Then, we're at his nephew's house. You remember his nephew's having a Christmas party, and he wanted Scrooge to come, and he said he would see him in hell first. And this is where that is. Scrooge's nephew is laughing. He's laughing because they're talking about Scrooge and how he reacted when he was invited to Christmas dinner. He said that Christmas was a humbug as I live. He believed it too. And I've cut a bit out, but he's a comical old fellow, that's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offenses carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him. I'm sure he's very rich, Fred. At least you always tell me so. Know that, my dear. His wealth is of no use to him. He don't do any good with it. He don't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking, that he's ever going to benefit us with it. I have no patience with him. Oh, I have. I'm sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself always. Here he takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come and dine with us. What's the consequence? So, how does Fred feel about Scrooge?
What he does, or the way he is.
Yeah, he's sort of accepting it, but he's not angry about it, is he? He's not offended.
I feel sorry for him.
Yeah, he feels sorry for him. He's seeing him causing his own misfortune. He sees into that, the kind of lonely, empty half-life that Scrooge is living. And he's not offended. He's not bothered. I mean to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not, for I pity him. He may wail at Christmas till he dies, but he can't help thinking better of it. I defy him. If he finds me going there in good temper year after year and saying, "Uncle Scrooge, how are you?" If it only puts him in the vein to leave his poor clerk 50 pounds, that's something. And I think I shook him yesterday. So what's his logic here? He's going to keep trying, right? And he's going to be kind to him. He's always going to invite him over and over, every time. And maybe it'll do a little good. Maybe it'll soften him. He thinks it already has. He might be right. How is that the Spirit of Christ with us? How is that Christmas?
Very,
Very.
very. Take care of them. Don't judge. Carry on what Jesus would want you to do.
Yes, he's not dismissing him because of his behavior, because he sees it as about Scrooge, not about himself. And so he cares about Scrooge. And he wants to make things better by always offering over and over the option to be a part of things. You know, it makes me think of forgiving somebody 77 times. It's okay. Every time I'll give him a chance because I want him to have that chance. I want to help. The Spirit of Christ with us.
That's positive.
Yes. You see how warm Fred is. You know, one of Dickens's friends said that of all of his characters, the one that was most like Dickens is Fred. And they start doing party tricks, blindsman's buff, dancing, something they call forfeits, which is kind of like little bets that if you lose, you have to do something silly. You know, like wear a silly hat or put some of the ash from the fireplace on your face, or just dumb little things. And like it was fun for them. They didn't have TV. So they're playing. All of these young adults, but adults, are all just playing and laughing. For it is good to be children sometimes, and never better at Christmas when its mighty founder was a child himself. I think this might have something to do with Tiny Tim, too. What do you think? Being a child. Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. The greatest in the kingdom of heaven are people like Tiny Tim, who know their children, who know they can't do anything for themselves, but are joyful and open and happy and ready to connect to others. The Spirit of Christ with us. Speaking of children. So we've been talking about children this whole time. I'm just going to close the door. That might not do very much. We're going to have some more children here now. This is the last bit of the section. Anyone remember this? What happens after they leave the party? And it says they go through a whole bunch of other places and see all the ways people are celebrating Christmas. And then Scrooge notices a little claw poking out from under the robe of the Spirit. He says, I think there's a claw under there. And it's not really a claw, it's a foot. And the Spirit pulls his robes back, and there are 2 children in the robes. Anyone remember this? It's sometimes in adaptations, but not always. But it seems like it was very important to Dickens because it's getting at what he's saying about the way we treat children. 2 children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They were a boy and a girl, yellow, meager, ragged, scowling, wolfish, but prostrate too in their humility, where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints. A stale and shriveled hand like that of age and pinched and twisted them and pulled them into shreds. These are children who should be beautiful and open and loved, but are not. Spirit, are they yours? They are man's, and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance, this girl is want. Beware them both in all their degree, but most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. Deny it, slander those who tell it ye, admit it for your factious purposes, and make it worse, and abide the end. It's like an apocalyptic prophecy. Ignorance and want. Why would ignorance and want be starving children, given what we know about the story so far?
Well, ignorance is what Scrooge was in the beginning.
Yes.
He was ignorant of the situation. So you're not going to help something you don't know about.
And want is what's being caused by that ignorance, right? This is, are they your spirit? You know, you're the Spirit of Christ with us. Did you make this? No, man made this. They are man's. You remember way back in the first session, we talked about how some people, like Thomas Malthus, believed that the poor were kind of an inevitable consequence of nature and that we had to let them die because we had to have the right amount of population. So it would achieve balance. So that giving people charity is kind of a bad idea because it will keep growing the population past its ability to support itself. Dickens is saying the opposite. Man is creating this situation. He's not just inevitably living this way because it's the only way to live. We are making this happen. And it's going to destroy us. Dickens, in September, the month before he started writing A Christmas Carol, had gone to visit what they call a ragged school. These are free schools for the poor, and they were very badly managed. The teachers tried their best. Usually they had no funding at all and had to pay for it themselves. This is a picture of a ragged school. You see how many kids there are? See how many teachers there are? Can you imagine how hard it would be to learn in that environment? And some of these children were so neglected and left. You remember little Dickens was left by himself, didn't have parents who looked after him, that there's no one there to love them or help them. And he wrote a letter to his friend after he went to see this school. He was so affected. To find anything within them who knew nothing of affection, care, love, or kindness of any sort, to which it is possible to appeal, is at first like a search for the philosopher's stone. It takes a long time for the teachers to get through to them because they've never been cared about. They don't know how to respond. I have very seldom seen, in all the strange and dreadful things I have seen in London and elsewhere, anything so shocking as the dire neglect of soul and body exhibited in these children. In that prodigious mystery and ignorance of the swarming masses of mankind in England, the seeds of its certain ruin are sown. I never saw that truth so staring out in hopeless characters as it does from the walls of this place. On his brow, I see that written, which is doom. We're killing our children. We're destroying the future. That's not the Spirit of Christ with us. So he's very passionate about this. And I think here we're sort of seeing an allusion to the mark of the beast in Revelation. Scrooge is horrified. Have they no refuge or resource? Cried Scrooge. Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? The bell struck 12. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost and saw it not. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. When I was reading this with Father Dave this summer, he mentioned, and I think he's probably right, that there's sort of echoes of St. Peter with the rooster here. The hour strikes that was foretold, and his words are cast back on him at the same time. And the moment comes. What do you think? It's very intense. And it's quite a strong way to end this section. And it just, everything he's been setting up so far is just turned on Scrooge. And he's realizing what he has done and the consequences of it and the importance of caring for the poor man's child. All right.
Very nice.
Very nice. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.